The Central Bank of Nigeria is planning on replacing the Naira currency to reduce excess cash, inflation and crime. Although the currency could be in circulation as early as mid-December, Nigerians will have until the end of January to exchange the old bills, after which they will cease to be legal tender. This is the first time Nigeria will have changed the design of its currency in 2 decades. The bank will redesign and print new bills for the 200, 500 and 1,000 Naira denominations, CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele told journalists during a news conference in Abuja. The action is part of authorities' efforts to halt the slide of the country's official tender, which has lost more than 35% of its value in the past year. Now, the CBN also said the measure will help tackle the issue of counterfeit notes and recall large amounts of money outside the bank's control. Now, today we have guests in the studio, but we will be beginning with Dr. Emeka Okengu. He's a development economist. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the show.
Yes, nice to be here.
All right, so let's begin with the rift between the Minister of Finance and the CBN governor, okay, and she was actually disowning the position of the CBN. Why are they not on the same page? But before you actually answer that, let's take a look at a video of her disowning this whole issue.
That really you should call the monetary authorities because they're the competent authority to do this. We were not consulted. It was an announcement that we heard, and I've seen.
Okay, you just saw the press release like every other body.
Part of the reasons that was advocated is that's one of the ways to mop up liquidity to manage inflation. But there are also consequences that we're also looking at. What would the consequences be? There will be some benefits, but there will be some challenges. And I don't know whether the monetary authorities have actually looked very closely as what the consequences are and then how they can be mitigated. So I still advise that you have that discussion with the monetary authorities.
That policy statement, dollars have started going up.
Yes.
And that is the consequences, because the target is by January, when this will take effect, dollar will have hit like 1,000 Naira to $1.
So I've said my opinion as a Nigerian. I've said my opinion as a Nigerian, not as the fiscal authority. First of all, as a fiscal authority, we were not aware of it. It was an announcement. And secondly, I think that's one of the ways that they're trying to use to manage inflation. But there are consequences that also need to be considered and how to manage those consequences.
Well, Mr. Emeka, still on the question. Now, the president has since come out to say that, the CBN has the backing of, has his backing for redesigning the Naira notes. Do you think this puts an end to the rift between the Minister of Finance
I think what's important is that we don't personalize this, because we're talking about authorities.
Okay.
And in any economy, you have your monetary policies and you have your fiscal policies. And there's no way, okay, one can function without the other, okay, because the fiscal policies are actually supposed to be a reflection, okay, of how you manage your monetary policies. I remember that hitherto until some while ago, the CBN was actually under the supervision of the fiscal authority. So if you look at it technically, your fiscal policies actually should drive your monetary policies. In my long years of development, this is the strangest I've seen or heard. Okay, that you can have the two most important authorities not being in the picture. And I can tell you this for certain. It's also not a position you take into because you are politically correct. There's some level of, what do I call it now, experience required, okay, for you to be able to head, such authority, either the monetary or the fiscal. So it's a major challenge, okay? And I haven't said that. Everybody seems to want to take sides, okay? There are no two sides to bad news. Bad news is bad news, okay? There's no other way to define a headache, as I call it a headache. What the CBN has done, like the Minister of Finance has said, has consequences, and we're beginning to see these consequences. Okay? But what this action, let me answer you directly, also means is that you can actually now understand why we seem to be moving around in very crazy circles. Because if at the level of being minister, she's probably the most important minister in this administration, she is not aware that government wants to undertake such huge, humongous policy, okay, without her knowledge. And then you're telling me that the president has the backing and the rift is over. It's not about the president, okay? It is about Nigeria.
So talking of consequences of this policy, what are those issues?
Haven't you still seen them? Are you not seeing them? First and foremost, even without taking that decision, the dollar was almost, spiral out of control. 2 days after taking it, the dollar is at 850 to a Naira today. Do you know what that means? It technically means that your Naira is dead. Okay, because the same thing you want to protect, you didn't protect well. Now, the people who have this cash you want to recover have just gone to convert it into Forex. All right? So, and remember that there's no policy you have, stopping the use of Forex. So it is going to get worse. And again, all the reasons that the CBN had given, about this, as right as they might appear, on paper, okay, it doesn't just add up. Remembering that it is the CBN that has lent over 20 trillion to this government that are now trying to, secretarize. It is the CBN that had thrown over 9 trillion, okay, into their interventionist program, okay, over which they're struggling to get back over 6.7 trillion. So if anybody is talking about these monies that are running around, who actually has been the major, precursor? It is the CBN.
Okay. Now, what do you think the CBN and the government, should have done differently? Because we have some analysts saying that instead of a redesign, that the governor should have advised a government to use, the floating mechanism to align the curve of the exchange rate.
The floating mechanism was on board, my sister, for more than 7 years. A lot of us had kept shouting on the floating mechanism. The same government refused to do it. Floating mechanism is not it's not a new idea. It's been there for over 6 years. Okay, and they are going to redesign. At what cost? Okay, you're talking about a currency that has no value. I mean, okay, listen, let's even be a little bit human here. Over 80% of our country is under the water, physically, technically. A lot of the people who live, there is no house in Bayelsa State, for instance, that is above ground. Now, what does that tell you? The banks are under the water. People's ATMs are under the water. People's checkbooks are under the water. People's properties are under the water. Ditto for practically 60% or more, okay, of that region. And some parts of northern Nigeria too. And you're asking these people to go to the banks to go and pay in their money. Are they going to be swimming to get into those vaults? Can't we be a little bit, can't we put a human face to this thing? Is this the right time? You have less than a month to Christmas. Okay, you have a government that's supposed to be exiting probably in the next 6 months. Is this what they're supposed to be doing? I thought that this time, for a government that is not going to be running for election, what they should be doing is to start putting their papers together. Because I mean, for you to be able to compile what you have done in 7 years, it's going to take a minimum of 6 months or more. Why aren't we focusing on that? And then the question will be, what is the hurry? Okay, what do we want to achieve? First and foremost, you tell us that. Can you equate how much the kidnappers has taken? I'm not trying to say that's right, okay, to how much that we have thrown into this Uncle Borrow's program that we need to recover. Can we equate that? Can we equate that with the monies we lose, by doing things that are untoward, by people who have, entrusted with their public trust? So who are we actually targeting?
Okay, now let's actually take you from where you talked about timing and introduce, a senior economist with SPM professionals joining us virtually, Mr. Paul Alaje. Good morning and thank you for joining us on Daybreak.
Good morning, thank you so very much for having me.
All right, so first of all, can you share with us your opinion on the redesigning of Naira notes, and what about the timing? Do you think this time is actually the right time?
Thank you once again. First, I've made my opinion known on the several pages of newspaper. and I one of the major television station, which is your TV station. I was with your correspondent last week to make this opinion known. Number one, the timing is wrong. The timing is wrong because around November, December, you have sporadic exchange of money, which we economists call velocity of money. Around December, November to December, people want to travel. Most transactions are done via cash, but not via electronic means. That gives a lot of concerns when people would have to take the cash first to their bank and bring it back again. And I've studied several countries of the world. The time they do currency redesign is not close to an election year or close to end of the year, because that could cause a number of chaos. Some banks are already overstretched in some areas where there are no activity in other areas. So to balance it, I have given my advice that I think a monetary authority should slow down and start this sometimes in January or February, mid-January or early February, if this policy must be done. That's to answer the question of time. The policy itself, there are several arguments that have been matched out. First, and we want to control inflation. The money outside the banking system is over 80%. And I provided answer to each of these reasons raised by the monetary authority. The concern about inflation, 50% of inflation today is not affected by money supply. 50% of inflation is caused by insecurity as caused by food scarcity. This is not my figure. The National Bureau of Statistics says food inflation remains the driver of inflation in Nigeria. Another 30% that is drawing inflation really sporadically is exchange rate, because significant proportion of what we consume in Nigeria are imported. Myself, I put on a suit. The other the other analyst or colleague in your studio put up maybe a native dress. But let me tell you, the two of us, our clothes are both imported. The way they sew his clothes in Nigeria is the way they sew my clothes in Nigeria. So, but where are the jobs? The jobs are not in Nigeria. The jobs are outside. Whether you dress like an Englishman or you dress like African, that is only in the expression of our thinking. What am I saying in essence? We import virtually everything, from phone to television to cameras to shoes to everything. That is what is driving inflation, because when your exchange rate is weaker, your prices will be higher. So locally, it is not just excess money supply, which could be a reason, but that accounts for less and less. Again, it's been a long time we changed the value of money. The question is, what do our people want? Nigerians watching at home, Nigerians watching in different remote areas and in urban centers. Improvement in the value of Naira. The question is, will this make 100 Naira stronger? Will this make 200 Naira stronger, or will it be poorer? Announcement of the policy, the markets responded to it. That is Nigeria, the exchange responded to it. It was bearish. The FX market responded to it. Naira jumped from what it was, which we were struggling with. It jumps to something really very annoying. Therefore, do I think that this policy is right for Nigeria now? The answer is no. I remember the evening when the policy was announced, I was speaking with journalists, and they asked for my candid opinion, and I mentioned to them that this will make, you will see a spike in dollar by the end of tomorrow. And that's exactly what happened, because politicians that you want to control, according to monetary authority, they are not dumb. They will take their money to FX market. And when there is demand for FX, demand for dollar, 1 Naira is not demanded for, the price will increase. Those of us that are doing a legitimate business, those of us that still buy imported commodity because we don't have option for local one, we will be affected. And this is why we are telling the monetary authority to please rethink. It is good that you want currency to be redesigned in your tenure, but please, if it's going to affect people, it will be selfish for us to continue with this policy without thinking it through.
But Mr. Alaje, do you think taking back the step already taken will change anything? If, for example, the CBN today announced that it is shelving this idea for now, will it change any trend that has already started?
It will change trends. It will change trends, even though you see.
So then, what is the point of saying?
Sometimes.
So then, what is the point if it won't change?
So you have started seeing people will go back to the market and exchange their dollar back to Naira because they thought there would be a policy. That means pressure on Naira will reduce. Two, if you do this, those that want to travel, people are there was a president who decided, I don't know who advised him, to remove subsidy. You know, when people travel around December to January, he lost an election. Don't play with people's sensitivity and culture. We cannot change the culture overnight. So I believe it will change because the timing is wrong and the policy has not been subjected to critical thinking before it was announced.
Okay, now let's come back to Mr. Emeka. Now, the CBN actually cited, insecurity as the reason. How practical is it? And, what is the benefit of such exercise?
What is insecurity? What reasons are they giving for insecurity? Did insecurity stop them from disbursing 9 trillion? Did it? Now, if you have insecurity, what do? You withdraw your money, you redesign your money, or you strengthen your security forces to tackle insecurity, which is what to do. Okay? And are we not, seeing how we're reading, in insecurity? Is our special forces, are they not trying their best to keep us safe amidst all this hullabaloo of insecurity? There will always be insecurity when you have inflation. I mean, you have a population growth that is not commensurate, with your economic growth. Why wouldn't you have insecurity? People are losing jobs. Why wouldn't you have insecurity? These are functions of very bad, badly thought, badly implemented policies of government. And it is happening because your fiscal policy is at, some parallel, with your monetary policy. And you now have, a man who thinks that he has, he can pull out a pen and then he starts using money belonging to, the commonwealth of people to what he thinks is the way to go. There is no doubt there's insecurity. And we expected insecurity. You will always have insecurity the moment you don't have social security programs. We don't have any social safety nets. Okay. Now remember that this insecurity you call insecurity is actually people's businesses. People are eking a living out of it. All right. It is the failure of a holistic national development plan. Okay. You don't even know how many you are. You don't know where people are located. You are not able to monitor on real time what people are doing. You don't have any facilities. Look at Kaduna, for instance. For those, who knew Kaduna in the heydays of Kaduna, you couldn't pass Kakuri. It was a 24-hour, industry. As people were finishing from shift 1, people were entering into shift 2. Shift 1 goes to sleep. Shift 2 goes to work. Everybody was happy. Ditto for Oshangawata. Ditto for every other place that you had, production. And so each time people like us talk about productivity, as a major means to ending insecurity, it is not withdrawing. It is not using insecurity. Some of us saw the Civil War, okay, where, I can't remember, as a very young person, I remember clearly my mom was cooking, beans, and there was nothing in that beans. I think it was just only water, and somebody jumped into my compound, carried both the pot of beans, the beans and the pot on the fire, and jumped across the fence again. That you're going to start witnessing that. In fact, at one time, there were stories of people stealing people's soup pots in the Maraba area. In Abuja here, you are going to get to that point. So it is not a question of citing. I think this is insensitive, just to put it lightly. Okay, it is inhuman. Okay, because if you considered insecurity, then this should have not been a policy you should be putting now that you have, people who are drowning, people who are in IDP camps, people who have lost property, people who have lost homes. What can be more insensitive than that?
Well, so one of the things that you highlighted earlier, you alluded to it, but I know that it's a very heated issue in the, among economists, the issue of the way and means window that the CBN has granted the federal government a lot of money. How is that affecting, our the monetary maze that we are in?
You see, when you throw money at problems, when you don't think things through, okay, what you don't have is a think through attitude. You wake up in the morning and you say, oh, we're going to be giving loans or grants or whatever to states, and then you start throwing trillions at these states. You have not found out what they did with what you gave to them in the first instance. All right? And then I want to ask, who has seen an audit report of what the states had done with these monies that were given to them? And at one time, you wake up again and say you're going to start withdrawing the money from source from them. That's not how you treat money. Money is not candy or flowers that you throw around anyhow. Okay, money has to have a proper process, where a proper engagement program. What I expected, federal government to do at that point in time, they were trying to bail out the states, was first and foremost insist that if this was going to be for people's salaries or worker salaries, tie it to the IPPIS. Okay, so that people get their alerts. Now, because if, and again, this is how I was brought up. I mean, I had a father who says to me, if you can't manage 10 naira, you can't manage 10,000. Okay? Now, you didn't ask this state, so it's not as if you have not been giving you your revenue, share. It's not as if you have not been getting money. What have you done with it? Was any audit conducted?
Okay. All right. Let me forward this question to Mr. Paul. Now, Mr. Paul, the CBN governor said, this particular policy or the redesigning of the Naira note will help in the minting of e-Naira. And also the CBN spokesman said the effort will, among other goals, deepen Nigeria's push to entrench cashless economy in the face of increased minting of the e-Naira. Some people seem to think that this is another way of forcing the masses to accept the e-Naira. What's your take on this?
Well, I have a very personal, because of other information I have about e-Naira. And I remember that the following day after e-Naira was introduced, I was invited by journalists to speak to e-Naira, and I made my position clear, even though there are other information that may not be safe for the public to consume. But I can tell you that economies, not just Nigeria, are introducing CBDCs. In Nigeria, it is called e-Naira. In other environments, different economies are introducing this money. But please, we need to act with a lot of caution. When people accept digital currency beyond they accept currency of fiat, it might mean that they are surrendering their freedom to monetary authority. And I can explain that to you. When you have e-Naira that is solely controlled, instead of what we learn in economics, banks are supposed to have interaction with the citizens. And in exchange of all the transfers, all the payments you've made, all the checks you have issued, such exchange should be done at the close of business by central bank. This one, the central bank wants to omit the bank and go directly to the citizen. It's a way of the states having direct access to the control, the finance of individuals, which is very detrimental. Because at the end of the day, that freedom that individual has may be surrendered on the platter of digitalization to government or to government or to authorities. And I don't think what economics across the world, we are speaking against such moves. Money is already digitized by bank apps. There is nothing e-Naira is doing that our mobile app from banks are not doing. The only thing they may not do is the control that may eventually be introduced. And that is exactly what some of us economists across the globe, in our association, in our meeting, we are speaking against, that government should give guarantee or assurance that these monies will eventually not be used to manipulate or to control people in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years. And this conversation is not because of who is in central bank today. It's also because of the future. Imagine there is another lockdown. There is another lockdown, and you are using e-Naira as means, you cannot go out. It is possible for monetary authority to control that your e-Naira will not walk more than 1 kilometer, more than 3 kilometers beyond where you are living, which means your freedom of movement to purchase is completely taken off from you. So it's so important for us to tread with a lot of caution. And I highlighted a number of concerns I have about e-Naira. It is not improving the value of Naira. Whether you call it digital or physical, it's still the same Naira that is getting weakened by the day. Secondly, the currency of fiat, central bank have said, oh, this money is getting dirty. We have not changed the culture of our people. If you have not changed culture of Nigeria, even if you print your money again today, it will still go to the same market, somewhere in Akampa, somewhere in Popo Yemoja, somewhere in Ororo, somewhere in Nigeria, that women will still keep it the way they know how to keep it best. Men, on their farms, they will still open their soil, put it right inside, bury it. That is the way they know. We need to educate people on proper management of money. That is on the second hand. On the third hand, the currency of fiat will reduce. Why e-Naira? It is because central bank can now manipulate, can now rearrange how they want money supply to go into circulation. But the question is, what was central bank looking at over the years that they lost track of over 2 trillion? What? So if you say that you lost track of 2 trillion out of 3 trillion plus, give us a guarantee that when you have new monies, you are not going to lose track of them. It is a question that has not been responded to by monetary authority.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Alaje. We'll just go on a short break. The show will continue in a moment, please.
Nigerians, elections are here again. Let us shun violence. Let us play the game according to the rules. Do not be a thug. Say no to violence. Let's rise and defeat violence, crime, and sabotage against the peace of our nation. Nigeria is the only country we have. We must do everything to keep it united. We must avoid any act that promotes hate and disintegration. Say no to separatist movement, terrorism, fake news, hate speech, religious bigotry, and any act that tends to divide us as a nation. Watch out for strange gatherings and suspicious movements. Restrict access to sensitive documents and data, the disclosure of which may damage national security. Educate your staff and family, particularly on measures to safeguard information and report security breaches. Apply relevant legal security guidelines to protect yourself and your neighbors. Due to misinformation and wrong choices, some idle persons resort to vices in their greed to get rich quick. They resort to kidnapping, killings for rituals, and other heinous crimes. Avoid wrong use of the social media. Before you broadcast that false message, think twice. Ask whether it will promote peace or violence. For safety at home, still be security conscious. Educate your household on safety tips. Report all suspicious movements and persons to the security agencies nearest to you. Be a good citizen. Be patriotic. To pass security information, please call 0813-222-2105, 0915-339-1309, 0908-837-3514, or send a mail to dsspr@dss.gov.ng. This message is from the Department of State Services, DSS.
Thanks for staying with us. It's been Daybreak on Trust TV, and the discussion this morning is on the matters arising from the CBN's decision to redesign higher denomination of the Naira, that is 100 Naira, 200 Naira, 500 and 1,000 Naira, and the reactions that is generating from economists and other Nigerians. And we are joined this morning by three distinguished economists to discuss this. And at this point, I would want to bring Mr. One of our guests here, Mr. Obona Okuku. And my question this morning, is on the timing now. Do you think this is really a good time for us to have this policy in the light of all the reasons that the CBN marshaled out?
There's never a bad time to take a good decision. I say that because if we look at the issues associated with this particular program, the security, them being able to control the circulation of Naira, and also making sure that those who have sophisticated, the people have more sophisticated style and programs to, create the counterfeit. So, I mean, these are things that has to be done. So if we're looking at, is it timely? So when will be the best time? Is it when you have a lot of counterfeit in the market, or is it when? So pretty much anyhow you want to look at it, there's always, so far you want to take a decision as a leader of a particular sphere, I mean, you'd go ahead and take the decision. Whether you like it or not, nobody will die at the end of the day, because the situation will still remain the same whether you take the decision or not. So, I mean, I don't see anything wrong with them taking the decision at this point in time. So mine is, do you have the approvals to do that? That's my interest. If you have the approvals, if you've looked at your chest and then you have what it takes to carry it out, why not go ahead and carry it out?
You are saying nobody is going to die, but what other people are saying is that, that of course some people will die, in court, maybe literally, in the sense of inflation that we are seeing. One of the things that the CBN said is that this will cut down on inflation. But with what is happening at the FX parallel market, is that really something that's good for the economy at this time?
No, you can't say that, because I mean, like on the flip side, because every decision has its, the backlash or what's the repercussions. On the flip side, yes, a lot of people want to take those monies and go into sectors where they can hide the money, because most of the time, people who are hoarding, they have a reason why they are hoarding, and it's always a very criminal or very negative reason. That's why they hoard. So if you're going to hoard, so you're going to move that money away and then start to either purchase FX, which is also on the negative. I've had this discussion and I said, if central bank decides to go this route, they should be holistic in their plan. You don't just single out, okay, I want to do this, but you need to also look at the multiplier effect. How do you protect monies going into, FX? There has to be a system where you don't allow, people go back to the black market to, begin to mop up FX, which will also affect us invariably. So if it's to have that decision or carry out this program, in isolation, I won't agree with them. But if you have a program designed, yes, in sane nations, these kind of things happen, and then you have, monitoring systems where you know where all the monies are going to go to. But if they don't, they should not try it, because one, a lot of funds are going to go into real estate. People are going to move funds from where they are herding them to, real estate, which they don't have, ways to match them. But if you have, why not? You can try. You can go ahead.
For this question to Mr. Emeka. Now, what about the middlemen, the banks? Are they prepared for this? Do you think there are measures already put in place to ensure that these banks have the capacity to manage the operational pressure that comes with the process?
Which of the processes?
That's
the Naira.
Yes, no, not Naira. The issuance of, taking in old notes and collecting new notes.
You see, like I told you when we started this conversation, I said to you that if you look at the past 7 years, what you've done is what they call the fire brigade approach. And you don't solve problems by somebody thinking that he understands what he's talking about, because there's always a second opinion. And that's why they say, when you have heads put together, you make more traction. CBN has led us to where we are now, and it's going to lead us into more damage. First, it started with the FX Aboki, if you remember. We started chasing one online trader with everything we had. In fact, the CBN governor himself, came to give a press conference on FX Aboki. And some of us said, no, that's not the issue, bro. Okay, the issue is that your Naira is very weak. And the only way you can give strength to this Naira is to get back into production and productivity. Thereafter, they said, oh, we now have currency speculators. We'll go after the BDCs. Licenses were cancelled. Thereafter, some of us said, why don't you just allow the value of this money, your money? Because I'm coming to where the banks can play a role now. And if you look at the conditions that the CBN has given the banks to be able to deal, you find out that that's where the banks can't even do much. Okay? If you do not have the proper infrastructure and superstructure for you to function effectively and efficiently, you can't. And I tell you why. It is not about granting loans. What is important is not for you to go and get a loan. And if you go and check, Nigeria is one of the few countries in the world that is still using collateral lending. Every other country, inclusive of Ghana, which is next door to us, has gone into what they call the cash flow based lending. What does it mean? That out of your outputs, we can now begin to now guarantee funding to you. But what you do in Nigeria is that for you to be able to get any loan, you must have value of over 140% of the money you're asking for what they call the first sale values. So a lot of the banks we now have just become some depositors' vineyard, if you may. You bring in money, you take money out. And if you, I think I want you guys to do a vox post on this. Take your camera into a bank and say, okay, let's even talk to your business development desk. Do you have people who can sit with people and be able to, appreciate how do people get in their business, their plans? What you call your bankable studies of what impact is that business plan to the collateral that the person is giving to you to be able to take money. So I will not in one sweep say to you, oh, the banks are not ready, because you also have one of the finest and best people there. We have very good people who are in the banking system. But I think holistically, our country is not wired to help banks to help you.
Okay. So we'll come back to that, but let's now go to Mr. Alaje, who is joining us virtually from Lagos. Now, do you think, like with all this, taking together what you have said earlier, that the CBN is at its wit's end, or what? I said, would you say, from all this, taking together what you have said earlier and the issues that, Mike and the other guests in the studio, Okoko, were saying, would you say that maybe the CBN is at its wit's end regarding management of our currency?
Well, I would say that central bank might have had advice from some persons, or they might feel that economy could solely be adjusted by monetary tools, but it is clear that that policy has not been properly criticized. It has not been properly critiqued. That policy has not been properly subjected to several other thinkings. That is why maybe the central bank governor made an announcement, and the implication will be on Naira. So I mentioned it to Nigerians this very day that policy was announced, that be ready in a matter of 24 hours, a sporadic increase in the rate of dollars. And many people have said, oh, yes, it's expected in the medium term. I also mentioned to those who says that, oh, don't worry, we are going to see reduction in the value of dollar. As I remember when primary was on, people had said that the rate of dollar to Naira will come down immediately after primary. I want anybody here to tell me, has there been a time since after the primary of all the major political parties ended that the value of Naira to dollar, Naira started improving? Naira will not improve because Nigerians are losing confidence. Okay, and you see, why you are all seated on your chairs today is because you have faith that the chairs you are sitting on will not fall you down. So central bank must rekindle.
All right, thank you so much. Sadly, time is not on our side, so but thank you so much for joining us on the show today. We have to actually stop you here and get the final take of Mr. Okoko. Now, while you're telling us, you're wrapping up, the IMF has actually urged caution in Nigeria's currency notes redesign plan, saying that they're ready to offer assistance if the country needed one. What's your take on this?
No,
should we opt for that or continue with the redesign?
When IMF offers, we have to still sit down and look at it. Bring it on the table. We all look at it. Experts will sit around the program and see if it's going to be beneficial to us. If it's not, we can leave it. But nevertheless, if what the central bank wants to do would actually, because whether we like it or not, there are other factors, that will either support what's about to happen, or whether we decide to take decision or not. Well, let's not forget that you have those who are the fiscal end who needs to come up with programs that will stimulate the economy. It's not just what the monetary policy people are, what they are doing from the central bank end. So there has to be a confluence. There has to be where we have a robust, well-designed program to move the economy forward. And please, let's not forget, this is an electionary year. A lot of profit-taking is happening, so a lot of things will still affect the FX market, not just the decision of the central bank.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Obonna Okuku, who is an economist, and as well as Mr. Mike and Dr. Emeka Okengo as development economist. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.